Welcome to the Holistic Success Show. I'm Elizabeth Lozano.
And I'm Dr. Robert Puff. Today we're going to have an expert on success.
Dr. Puff is going to be talking to us about being in the now, as well as how to avoid creating negative stories in your head.
And a question from you about what do I do if I work in a negative work environment?
And another question is about overcoming the fear of failure. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Thank God it's Friday. Have you ever said that before? I know I have. And, it can really be wonderful for the weekend to come and look forward to all these great things we can do. But there is actually something wrong with that phrase, with that concept. When you're looking forward to the weekend, it usually means the week isn't going very well and that you're kind of putting all your eggs into the weekend basket, and it's at the expense of the week. And of course, it's wonderful to have time off from work. It's wonderful to enjoy your family, be with friends, and have a relaxing weekend. Those are great. But too many people around the world, I think, including myself in the past, have made that the focus of their life. I'm living for the weekends. I can't wait to get through this. And another approach would be, instead of saying, thank God it's Friday, is thank God it's now. Thank God right now what's happening is what life is giving me. Now, it's not easy to transition into that. You may have work that you really hate. You may have bills that wear you down. You may have struggles during the week. But the direction you want to be headed is that when Friday hits, Friday just becomes another day. It isn't a day that you're living for, but you're learning to live throughout the week. So if you have a real strong propensity inside of you to say, I can't wait till Friday, to be truly holistically healthy, you need to work towards saying, I need to make my week better all week long. And so that each day I get up, each moment that I experience is truly full with life and vibrancy that you're feeling on the weekend, but you're feeling it throughout the week. So when Friday comes, you like it because it's a change, but the goal is to work towards liking your work too. And I know for many people that's a very challenging thing to do. So what I like to share with you is what I call the 5% rule. After you watch this episode, work this week on improving each day by 5%. Maybe next week until we meet again next week, you can say, Dr. Puff, I've made my life 5% better. When I get to work, I have pictures of my family up. I take a little bit longer for lunch. I relax at the end of the day. When I get home, I do things like meditate at the end of the day instead of watching TV, which kind of wears me down. You do things that improve your day throughout the day. You may get up, and when you have a break, instead of just sitting around the coffee bin and talking to people, get outside, stretch your legs, get some fresh air. There's many things you can do to improve your day throughout the day. And if you make those small improvements, those 5% improvements, when Friday comes, you'll be glad, but you'll also be glad it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday too. Peace.
Our first question is from Michelle in Boulder, Colorado. The people at my work are constantly complaining about their lives. I try to keep a positive attitude, but it's really hard in that environment. Any suggestions?
Michelle, there's two things I would suggest when you're in a negative work environment to help change it. The first thing is, when you approach someone and they're being negative, don't give them your attention. And what I mean is, you would hear them talking about something negative. Maybe it's about another person, an event, just something that bothers you. The easiest thing to do is just leave. Don't continue to participate in the conversation. Remove yourself from the situation. And what you'll find is, if they want to be around you, they have to talk about things that you're going to want to hear. And if they're talking negative, you will leave. So it will make them, if they truly want to be with you, that they're going to want to talk about more positive things. But more proactive than that would be actually changing the conversation So the second thing you could do is when you approach someone and they start talking negatively, is interject something positive. So when they're saying the cup is half empty, you could describe how it's half full. And I think what that would do, that would help them realize that, oh, there is other ways of looking at this. There are people out there that have a different perspective. And Michelle's one of the positive people here. They may not like that, but it will allow them to say, if we, again, want to be around Michelle, whether she changes the conversation or whether she leaves, we need to work towards being more positive.
And to add to that, I think for some people it might be a little bit difficult to just change the subject because they're maybe afraid that they're going to hurt somebody's feelings or afraid of being rude, or maybe getting up and just leaving doesn't feel right to them. So one thing you can do is, hey, nature calls, I have to use the restroom. It's okay for you to do that. And you're getting out of that situation. And it's amazing what that negativity can do. I once worked with a woman who, at work, she was in a place where everybody was always being negative, always talking about all the stresses of work and outside things, and she was having stomach aches all the time. And what I said to her is, do you have to eat lunch with them? She kind of thought about that. Well, no. Okay, well, what I wanted her to do then was to not have lunch with them, take time for herself, go for walks, do things that are positive for her, that help her, that fill her up, versus being around people that are going to bring her down. And guess what? Those stomach aches went away. So I think your question is an absolute wonderful and great question, because all of this stuff affects everybody on a great level.
Too, as you were speaking, I thought about one other thing you could do. As much as they're creating negativity in that environment, perhaps Michelle could bring in the positive part. Just really talk about things that are going on great in the world, how her life is going well. I think positive can be really infectious.
It can actually have that energy where you come in and your positive energy can really have an impact on them. Mm-hmm. So stay positive and don't get sucked into that negative energy.
Yeah, because you don't have to. You can really change your work, change your life, and perhaps even change the people you work with.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your question, and we wish you all the best.
Tranquility and peace. Find freedom and relaxation no matter where you are or who you're with. Be still, be free. Meditation for Health and Happiness, available at www.holistichealth.tv.
I'd like to welcome Justin Sachs to the show. He is a best-selling author of Your Mailbox is Full and The Power of Persistence. He is also an international speaker and coach, as well as the founder of Motivational Press Publishing. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So I think it's really important for people out there to hear about persistence and why it's important. So can you share with us what you have learned about persistence? Because I know you've interviewed a lot of people about that, and you've learned a lot even in your own life. So please share with us about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, for me, it started at the age of 13, and I started in the personal development industry with Tony Robbins. And while working with Tony, I got to travel all over the world, learning from the most extraordinary individuals on how they produce success. And then as a result, through connecting with all these different individuals, started working with Mark Victor Hansen, who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul. And after working with him, interviewing tons of experts in health, relationships, wealth, business, athleticism, whatever it may be, we found out the key ingredient to success is that of persistence, that every individual faces adversity, faces odds.
You said every individual, right?
Every individual, absolutely, faces circumstances that stand in their way. And so the challenge is, how do we push through those circumstances? How do we push through the things that limit us and that hold us back to really produce success?
Can you share some of the stories maybe that you heard about, some big obstacles that maybe you yourself or other people that you interviewed overcame? Because I think a lot of people out there in life, they have struggles, whether it's family or financial or whatever it is. And just to hear that if somebody else can overcome such a huge hurdle, they can as well.
Sure, absolutely. One of the biggest challenges we've heard is of individuals who are tens of thousands, even hundreds of $1,000s in debt. And as a result of being in such debt, it creates the biggest why, the biggest purpose for producing whatever they want to produce. And that's the first step to creating persistence, is to really having a big enough why that you're going to persist beyond anything that stands in your way. It's creating that no matter what commitment that's going to have you produce success over any odd that you face. And so the people that had the biggest challenges, the biggest negativity in their lives right now. To produce success, what it was for them was simply really creating that no matter what commitment, standing in the face of those odds, pushing through and creating success. Because everyone knows how to do it. It's just a matter of really being strong enough, bold enough, and committed enough to really do it, to really take the action to produce the success.
And you said having that why. What does that mean? Can you explain that a little
Yeah,
bit more?
absolutely. It's having that deep purpose within what you're doing. So with
Passion.
anything, exactly, the passion, right? So why are you actually doing what you're doing? With a big enough why, the how will always follow. And so when you create that why, when you create exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it for the biggest purpose of your life, I'll tell you what, people will commit murder and save a life for the exact same reasons. And it's simply a matter of what they're meeting with that action, right? And so by creating the biggest why possible, you can create a big enough commitment that you'll always produce success.
So I understand that one of the things you do as well is you go out to companies and you motivate them. What are some of the things that you work with them and that you can actually teach our audience as well?
Yeah, one of the biggest things that we work with individuals on is really harnessing the power of having that why, right? If you're going to create a sales goal in an organization, you want to say you produce $1 million of revenue in 6 months, how do you do it? Well, the biggest thing that you have to do is create the reason behind it of why. Why do you actually want to do it? Aside from the fact that producing $1 million is an exciting thing, it's something that really is, uplifting and exciting for you. Why do you actually want to produce that
But money
goal?
isn't always the answer for everything, right? That can't.
Exactly. And money rarely produces success. What you'll find is that why do so many people in network marketing and multi-level marketing, why do they fail so often, right? Why do they have such a hard time producing success? Because as you know, most people who enter multi-level marketing or network marketing, they don't succeed. They don't produce very much income. Why? Because money is only a motivator for a very, very few amount of people. And for the people that have different motivators, unless you connect network marketing with those specific motivators, you're not going to be successful. And so getting clear on that why, the most successful network marketers I know have a very, very clear why beyond the money factor. Right? You look at what makes people successful, it's because they realize that by helping people, by serving people, by helping people become more healthy, lose weight, whatever it is.
Interesting thing is actually Dr. Puff has talked about on the show, and I believe it too, is that when you're working and doing something, I think a really important thing is to really work towards helping others. And you can do it in a plethora of ways. I mean, it doesn't have to be just like directly like, let me help feed you or something. It is in so many ways, but I think to be able to give back to the world, it actually does something. I think it feeds your soul and feeds your heart and your passion.
Absolutely. We're in the process of writing our third book now. It's called The Power of Philanthropy, because when we studied the power of persistence, when we studied those individuals, we found out that the second element that produced success amongst every single one of them was their level of philanthropy. It was giving back. It was contributing. I know tons of individuals, tons of experts call it the miracle of tithing. When you give back 10%, when you give, you receive tenfold what you give, right?
Okay.
When you give, whatever you give, you receive back tenfold what you've given. And so the power of giving, the power of contribution, and the power of philanthropy is that second element that produces success hands down every time.
So what do you say to people who might be in a place of like, well, I feel like I don't have anything to give. Maybe I don't have money to give. What are some other things that people can do?
Anyone can give anything that they have, whether it's time, whether it's energy, whatever it is. Just by giving someone a hug is the most simple act of giving that can transform someone's life. You know, when Edward Lorenz wrote the doctoral thesis on the butterfly effect, and he wrote it in the 1960s, but when he wrote it, it was laughed out of the New York Academy of Sciences. Well, what ended up happening is that later it was proven to be a fact. And the butterfly effect basically says that if a butterfly flaps its wings on one side of the world, on the complete opposite side of the world, it'll create a hurricane by the level of molecules of air that move against each other so many times, creating such a magnitude of impact that a hurricane is actually created simply by a butterfly flapping its wings one time. And when it was proven, it was not only proven to be effective for humans, it was also proven to be effective for any individual, for any living matter, including humans, that we too have the same impact, that any small movement, whether it's a hug, a smile, what have you, can have the largest effects on people's lives throughout the world.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, I can't even imagine if a butterfly has an impact so grand. What can a gesture of kindness or love or giving do for everything else? There's a commercial that's out that I'd seen that, somebody's, help somebody or stop somebody before they cross the street because they're going to get hit by a car, and it that person sees somebody else and they help somebody else. And I think it's that message as well. So I think it's just awesome that you've created so many things. I know that you have a book that you've created that helps with teenagers. What specifically, when you work with teenagers, what is the message that you're trying to get out there?
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest thing with teenagers, it's called Your Mailbox is Full, and what it is, it's all about how our mailboxes or our lives are so filled with all these influences consistently throughout our lives, and that we have so many influences now. What I like to say is the competition's greater than ever before, and the moment's briefer than ever before. We have so many influences in our lives now that it's so much harder to truly impact teens at a powerful level, and we have less time than ever before to do so. And so what we always talk about is how can we most powerfully influence teens with leadership principles, with time management principles, with goal setting, with living a healthy lifestyle? What are the things we can do to most effectively influence teens? And one of the biggest tips I can give a parent is to just get connected to your teen and allow the teen to create their own purpose. When we talked about purpose a few minutes ago, what we talked about was creating your own purpose for what you're doing, right? It's not about what somebody else says. It's not about when someone says you can create $1 million in network marketing. That's not the thing that lights you up. You have to find out what lights you up individually. Well, the same is true for your teenager. They have to create the purpose for themselves. And so that's what's often difficult for parents is when you talk about drugs or alcohol, for example, how do you get a teen to say no to drugs and alcohol? Well, it's not about your reasons for them. It's about the teen's individual reasons for saying no to drugs and alcohol. So often it's just asking them a simple question. Hey, why don't you think doing drugs and alcohol is in your best interest? Mm-hmm. Ask them and get them to tell you, because the why that they create is more powerfully connected to them than any why that you can possibly give them.
That is so true, and I think a message to tell parents as well is it is really important to tell your kids that they can do and accomplish anything, because if we don't tell our kids that, how much does that affect them later? How much does it, like you've worked with teens, how much does that affect them if nobody's ever told them that they can do anything?
You know, it's so true, because what we see is that somewhere between the age of about 12 and 19 years old, we find out that teenagers they stop being told that they can do absolutely anything they want to, and they start being told, you think you're going to be successful, you got another thing coming.
Which is really sad. So if people would like to get a hold of you or your books, which you also have available on an audio version, how can they get a hold of you?
They can go to my website at www.jsachs.com, JSACHS.com, or we're on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. We're all over the place now, so we're having tons of fun.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Today I'd like to talk about the stories we create in our head that make suffering far worse for us. And I'd like to talk about my own story as an example. When I was in high school and my early years in college, I had, what many of us have is a high school sweetheart. And I really cared for her, and I was planning on spending my entire life with her. And, as life occurs, we broke up. And it was devastating for me. I remember feeling the pain, and I really felt this was a woman I wanted to spend my life with, and I actually thought the pain would never go away. The only way it was going to be solved is if her and I got back together. And I remember so much suffering occurred inside of me, because as I envisioned my future, I felt suffering, I felt pain. I thought, what will my life be without her? I couldn't imagine anyone else that we were replacing her. We were so close. She was really my first love I'd ever had in my life, and I could only imagine darkness in my future. It was very painful. It was an awful experience, and it kept going and it kept going and it kept going. It lasted for a very long time. But during that time, what I discovered was when I would be doing certain activities like being with friends, going to a movie, playing sports, in a classroom, I wasn't suffering at all. It's only when I thought about it that the suffering inside of me arose. And I believe, through time, what I've learned is if we truly get that point that the suffering isn't necessarily the event, but what we're creating in here, that adds so much more to the suffering that we're experiencing. So what I've learned and what I'd like to share with you is maybe you could try too, is right now you too may be going through a dark tragedy, something really awful that you feel there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe you've lost your job, someone you love has died, and it feels like it's never going to get better. examine how much in your mind, this thing here, you're creating a story about that. And seeing if there aren't breaks throughout the day when there isn't pain there or suffering because you're not thinking about it. Instead, you're being present with what is. So if that seems a little bit true to you, what you could try is work through the healing process. And we talked about healing in other episodes, but work through the healing process. But when your mind starts creating this story of the future, it always being bad, it's going to continue, you're never going to get better, that's the story, because you do not know what's true. So instead, when that story kicks in, get back to being present with what's happening right here, right now. And what you'll find in that presence, without this mind creating a story, you'll find actually the happiness, the joy inside your heart that's always there. Peace.
Our second question is from Gabriella in Fresno, California. I'm afraid of failure and it gets in my way of trying new things, even in my career. Any suggestions?
Gabriella, our fears come from our conditioning in our past, but they get reinforced in our mind. When we have something negative happen to us, a bad experience, we think about it and we reinforce it through our thoughts. Now the good thing there is these fears can be changed also through our thoughts. We are in control of them, and the best way to change them, or one way, is by actually changing the way you think. If you change the way you think about something that you're afraid of, that fear will dissipate. For example, you may be afraid of choosing to change careers. And what you can do is start thinking about, well, what if I were to be positive, be loving, saying, I'm going to do my best, I really am competent at this. In a sense, becoming your own little cheerleader, cheering yourself on, reinforcing it through positive words, positive affirmations. Instead of hearing the negative, which I guarantee you're hearing with the fear, you're replacing it within yourself with the positive. And when that positive becomes the dominant voice in your head, what will happen is that fear will dissipate like mist, and it will be replaced by healthy, positive affirmations, which will help you move forward and accomplish the things that you want to do in life. What are your thoughts?
You mentioned conditioning earlier, and the sad thing is that if at a young age you don't get a lot of positive reinforcement, somebody telling you you can do anything you want, even if you fail, you just get up and try again, we don't internalize messages of, I can do it, I can do anything. Or if somebody tells you that you can't, especially as a young child, that really affects you, or maybe you've had life experiences that have kind of brought you down. But I think it's important what Dr. Puff had said in regards to kind of rewiring your brain, retraining your brain, because you've got a lot of negative self-talk in there that's convincing you that you can't, that you're going to fail. And first of all, we learn from our failures. I know I've made mistakes. There's things that I've failed at, but I've learned from them and they've helped me to grow. And that's one thing you need to remember. Another thing that I often do, and I recommend to people if I'm feeling down or I'm having that negative self-talk, is I'll actually create a list on my mirror with maybe like a erasable marker or something of all the positive attributes of myself, or a positive affirmation that says you can do it, you're great. And I know that might sound a little cheesy and somebody might read it, but you know what, if they're going to judge you, forget about it. They shouldn't be judging you anyway. But it helps you to see it every day and to believe in yourself, because that is so important. Don't be too afraid to take risks.
You know, and one last thing I would suggest for her is to learn how to not just affirm your mind, but give your mind a break. Quiet your mind. And I think when your mind is still, you don't hear the negative, you don't hear the positive, you just have the quietness. And that quietness, there is no fear.
And we have a lot on meditation. Please check out our Meditation for Health podcast, because I think it will help you a great deal. Thank you so much for your question.
How to Live a Positive Life, available at www.holistichealth.tv.
Our quote this week is by Benjamin Franklin. Diligence is the mother of good luck. In life, it's more about what we do and how we do it than it is about chance. Thank you for joining us on the Holistic Success Show. If you'd like to learn about meditation, please listen to our Meditation for Health podcast available on iTunes and our website.
And if you have a company or organization would like to partner with us in success, please visit our website.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week.